This is the EnT podcast, conversations about education, technology, and culture with Dr. Doug Reed and Dr. Matt Stranick. Thank you for joining us.
My name is Dr. Doug Reed, and I am located on Abagway, the traditional and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people.
My name is Matthew Stranick, and I'm in Kamloops, British Columbia, on the traditional lands of Tk'emlúp-te-Secwépemc within Secwépemc-Ulu, the traditional and unceded territory of the Secwépemc people. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 27th episode of the EnT podcast. As ever, Dr. Matt Stranick and Dr. Doug Reed here with you.
Hello.
We hope you're doing well. How are you doing today, Doug?
Good. The weather's really cold and it's really windy, so it's kind of nice to be inside.
Okay, that's all right. I mean, you kind of have you went from sort of moving things around in a mudroom to doing some completely redoing of the mudroom. Is that what I understood from the Facebook thingy?
Yeah, I didn't work on Friday and my wife did, so I went in and tidied it up and cleaned it up and vacuumed and swept and moved things around. And the next thing I know, we're at the hardware store and we've got paint and I'm sketching out plans for where the storage unit's going to go and how many 2x4s I'm going to need to build it. And it's like, oh, okay, I guess this is what I'm doing this weekend. So
decent.
It's fun, but it was just
I was going to say, that sounds like somebody's version of fun. That's
yeah, all mine. Yeah. I like it.
Good stuff. So you're in a build it, construct it, creatively kind of mentality this weekend.
I really am. It's wonderful to get here. It's wonderful. I shook a few cobwebs loose. When you've been, like when I go through the depression spirals, right, where I'm down and everything, I shook a bunch of stuff loose yesterday. I'm not sure how, but I just felt dopey for about half an hour, or an hour and a half, depending on who you ask. Then I took a nap and then it was good, but it was nice to clear the cobwebs. And it's nice to know that can happen.
The cognitive cobwebs. Yeah, man, I definitely know about that. Yeah. I myself have, posted on social media to that effect, not to go too far into the weeds. My thing now, which, I mean, I feel like I overshare about stuff, but, seriously, between the record collection and just everything else, I'm assuming it's going to level out to a normal level of social media activity once I, got, a regular, type job to kind of attend to. But I went through, I kind of been going through sort of an uptick in job interviews, which on the one hand is great because, I mean, you can't win if you don't play. There was this one on Friday where, I mean, I had no reason to think it went badly. The people were nice. They were asking reasonable questions. It was fine. It was as fine as these things can be. But just kind of afterwards, I just kind of had this, I don't know, serotonin dip, this kind of level where I'm just like, man, I'm doing the 14th or 15th one of these in however long. And, even the ones that go well, even the ones that I'm still under consideration. I mean, they check references and stuff, but they're just not letting me know. And it's just I just I got some records in the mail and, my thing is my thing on social media is I hope people, I do a little bit of venting, but I hope people don't mistake, some of the stuff for venting, because I just think if I'm dealing with my, mental health stuff, and I speak to it, what I'm actually hoping, besides, just kind of finding a certain limited catharsis in that is that other people who may be struggling with their mental health or, have, issues with anxiety and depression or whatever can kind of look at what I am putting out there in my own limited sphere and just kind of go, okay, somebody else is out there, somebody else is dealing with this, and here are some things that this person is trying to do, to maintain and get better. So, I mean, that was kind of the whole, I just got some records in the mail, had a nap, tidied up. My kids, have showed up for the weekend, and I'm as good and I'm as functional as I get really now. And also, between honestly, this podcast, the writing and production and executing of that, along with the other one, which I spent some time on, and there's even a new creative effort in the offing. All of that, for me, it's like I'm in a rental apartment. I don't have the wherewithal to redo the mudroom, but what I can do is build some things on the internet with my WordPress and make another creative outlet / window into the universe, right? Or a doorway, as it were. So, I kind of I appreciate the sentiment that you're starting out with there, friend. Of the whole, shaking out the cobwebs, keeping it real. That's kind of we all got our own ways about that, and I think sometimes it's nice to take a little moment and reflect on that and appreciate what we have. So yeah, that's I think a nice way to start things out, bud. So
I think so too.
Yeah, so tell me, bud, what are we talking about today?
Okay, as we mature as a podcast, again, one of the things we had talked about was investigating tools, right? Because there are some tools that educators use all the time, some that are up and coming, and we talked about AI, and we're going to have to talk about AI again because it's just exploding. It's everywhere.
It's funny, and then that's absolutely a good kind of run up. And I'm going to ask, first of all, are we going to talk mostly about the Excel sheet that you shared with me, or are we going to talk mostly about the doc? Either with the document. Either way. But
probably
then the
next document. The Splot document.
Okay, because where you were going with that, I thought maybe spoke to the Excel sheet. But apart from that, again, I mentioned this, in probably the last episode or the one before that, where like I'm out of the game. I'm like in my own kind of area right now, where I'm lacking in an institutional context. But I've been running up I've been going into LinkedIn to kind of amplify the signal for this podcast, right? I've been going into LinkedIn and just follow, connect. People I don't know, people who just look like they have cool CVs and whatever. And I'm up to close to 500 connections there now. And that has led to because you get like with the premium account, you get like a certain number that you can add every week. So every time a week rolls around, I'm just like until it tells me that I've hit my quota. And out of, a bunch of them, a good 2/3 of them, even if they don't know you, just because you have like X number of shared connections, will tend to follow you back. And that's led to a corresponding uptick in the number of views that this podcast gets, the YouTube, and I presume some of the other things. So, I mean, apart from the fact that I think we have a worthy message on this show that's worth sharing as widely as possible, just from a, technology and social standpoint, which is, one of my things that I'm into, I just think it's neat. I just think it's interesting.
Yeah.
And
part of the thing we always promise to do is we were going to share our learning.
Exactly. Right as much as we can and as widely as possible. So, I mean, but now my LinkedIn feed, which I actually scroll through now because there's so many, contributors to it, like a lot of like, I don't want to say angst about AI because it's really, there is some angst, but it's like there are some legitimate concerns. Now, me with my, uninstitutional context, I've just been like, images, GIFs. I discovered this one tool, Mage AI, which on the one hand, it's I was like, take my $15 a month for the next little while just so I can mess around with this, and it will create GIFs, the moving ones. And it also has some capabilities where you can like take, a picture, an existing photo, and like either redo the front of it or redo the background of it. So, hence my new Tinder picture has me going up in flames, sitting up in front of the camera, by way of a metaphor. Or, but more precisely, for this new literary website that I was kind of starting, I'm like, okay, it's about Canadian literature. So it's like, okay, AI, what do you think a GIF of a hockey fight will look like? And it comes up with something which sort of looks like a hockey fight, but not really. Like the pixelation is weird and the movements through it are strange. And I'm just like, man, this is some creative ass stuff that this is, capable of. But I understand if I had to teach like something like, say, business writing or, like science with the writing aspect of it or whatever, that there'd be one hell of a learning curve. Or, I could see it as a threat, that's gone from the horizon to right in front of my nose very quickly. And how the hell do I deal with that? So
now, threat versus opportunity are two different things.
But I can see how, from, just somebody, again, like not to diminish folks who don't have pedagogical training or whatever, but just, suppose you've done your doctorate in astrophysics, suppose you've done your doctorate in, I don't know, engineering, right? You could see, like, if you haven't really had exposure to, curriculum, instructional design, blah, 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 it's just like a thing that you don't know what the hell it is. And the natural recourse, is, fight or flight sometimes, right? Yep. You can't run away from it. It's, like you can't. So then what happens? The combatant instinct comes in, the reptilian mind comes in a bit, right? So, I mean, again, what I can see and hope with this podcast is that, we're hopefully providing some levity to that, like the sky is not falling, or at least not yet, at least not yet. And I guess the other aspect of it is really just, utilize the moment, take the moment, as you say, right? Take an opportunity for new pathways to develop new ways of teaching in your own practice, which, can either circumvent this stuff or, better still, use it in ways that actually engage students. And because that's the world that they're going to be living in. It's not just about now, it's about 5 years from now when they're like into their careers. And these tools are going to be there. These tools are going to be more advanced. So if you show them kind of good practice skills with it, good literacy with it now, then, in 5 years, you're doing them a solid when they're, utilizing this stuff within their normal, kind of work. Sorry, bud, that was a bit of a soliloquy there, but I hope that kind of comes across as being, generally sensible.
And what I'd like to do is I would like to commit at least one episode to the writing, AI writing, one episode to AI graphics and stuff, but not this episode.
Sure. Again, because,
it's on the top of your head and it's cool and interesting.
And I was literally fiddling with it last night and into this morning. So there we go. It's coming for all of us.
And what I want to talk about is what you fiddled with earlier this week or last week.
Do tell.
Which is Splots, or what I call is a very special episode of the EnT Tech podcast.
Yeah, fair enough, man.
Did you watch much TV as a kid? Like, did you ever watch a sitcom and they'd have a very special episode so you knew it was going to be depressing?
Oh boy. You mentioned to me in the Facebook thingy that this was, hopefully you're gonna, hopefully you're gonna see some of the graphics here and not be disparaged or something to that effect. I'm like, nah, man, it's it's a wide open, splot filled world as far as I can tell. So I don't think there's any bad, negative stuff. There's just like, okay, we're using critical discernment. So you give all these notes. Yeah.
I've analyzed it, and basically, you are not useless because you can still be used as a bad example.
So that's
what has happened with this plot that I took a look at. It was, wow, all the things we have been talking about for 8 months. It's like, this is so wrong. There's so much stuff here that just drives me bonkers. And I even wore a special T-shirt just for that. Okay. I have the WKRP Thanksgiving turkey drop T-shirt because you put turkeys in your splot.
Good Lord! You referenced.
I want to summarize this whole splot by saying, "As God is my witness, I thought turkeys could fly." Right? Because if you remember that WKRP episode,
I can't not remember it. It's some classic television, right? Classic.
It is. This is the concept. Like, as I tried to put notes together to investigate this tool, it was like, oh my goodness. Like, it hurt me because I'm used to going to the literature and seeing what the community has said. And the community walked away from this a decade ago. So how little bits of it even still exist is just, oh my goodness.
First of all, man, I really got to get that shirt. I guess probably I can just, look for that online, but that's going in my notes because just wow, right? That's turkeys can fly, in a fictional world, but maybe not the world that we live in.
Because I know your splot, you threw a bunch of turkeys in.
Well, okay, so let me say, first of all, I was really leaning into the part of the Ed Non-Tech podcast for that one, and honestly, it's really, once I started actually putting my hands on the tech, I stopped thinking of it, as a splot as such. I was thinking, okay, this is going to be a WordPress form built into a WordPress site, with like a plugin, and I went into this in some, ridiculous amount of detail in that extra half episode, that extra video that I prepared, that screencast. So I won't, duplicate that here. But I just sort of thought of it as, okay, so, people, students, whoever, can fill in some fields, upload, some content, put it onto a website, a class website, if you will, and it'll populate it. And, the WordPress interface, gives you a pretty good amount of flexibility in how that content appears, how it's rendered, and as far as, I guess, some anonymity goes, it could be potentially used in, an open learning, wide open kind of experience where people are distributed across various areas. It could, potentially, be useful in, particularly in FIPA, compliant areas that are kind of sensitive. Like BC has some of the strictest data privacy laws anywhere, so it kind of aligns well with that. Just to play Splot's advocate, I mean, again, I was in an environment for 4 years where some of the folks, not just even at my institution, but in other institutions in BC were, pretty up on this. They were pretty, and I'm just, I don't necessarily see the harm as such. And within a sandbox kind of environment, I'm like, it gave me an excuse to redo the sandbox, make it current, make it change the theme, make it more engaging. And actually, it caused me to spend $300 to buy the advanced plugin for the form that would do that. I have subsequently used the form, which permits file uploads, as a submission point into my new literary publication.
Oh, cool.
So
there is value. Good.
So there's value in having, messed around, gained greater proficiency with, WordPress, gain greater proficiency with, forms and things like that. So
awesome.
That's not to gaslight what you're saying, because
it's just the opposite. Just the opposite. It's like, thank goodness you could find some value in it, because I'm going to go to the naming issue.
Sure. So
we talk about naming issues forever. We talk about naming issues all the time.
Names mean something.
Is it the smallest possible learning open tools? Is it a model verification tool? Is it a vegetation plot database? Is it a statistical data tool? Is it a volume of spilled oil? Is it a mathematical convolution? Is it an anatomical term for a cervical plexus? Is it a stitch or a pattern of knitting? Is it a weave? Is it some type of tangled mass? Is it to split? Is it an off splitter segment? Is it a segment? Is it a spot, blotch, plat, or a plot of land? Like, who in their right mind would come up with an abbreviation that you can't find? It's ridiculous. Which one of those? I just gave you 14. Which?
So 14 results from the one Google search.
No, that was hundreds of Google searches.
Okay.
That was hundreds trying to find which splot we're talking about here. So it's
so what I think is, and again, this is just based anecdotally, is you bring your own concept to the tool, and that is sort of aligned with the pedagogical intention. That's, I'm not saying I necessarily agree with that perspective, but that's the perspective that has been expressed to me.
I do not believe there's a pedagogical intention.
Okay. That's what it is.
Sorry, I got all wound up because.
No, man, no. Please, keep it up. Keep it up. This is a special episode. This is.
It is. Like one of the lines I found when I finally found it is the acronym is vague and playfully undefined on purpose. And it's like, are you kidding me? What it is it demonstrates lack of thought. That's what it does. That's why people aren't publishing this stuff. Because the lack of thought would get it nuked at any conference. I can't imagine a journal saying, oh, yeah, you didn't define it? Perfect. Right? That's not how academia and post-secondaries works.
Well, but if you are positioning yourself as somebody who is like of the, I don't know, like heroic contrarians, we do things our way. We do things our way, and that's our function within the academy, to do things our way. So sort of raising from a silo to a tower, if you will, a contrarian, like we don't need to be academic because the academic is assumed by association with the institution, which, for me, as I said in that little video that I kind of came up with, I'm like, my thought was, can I recontextualize this in a useful way outside of an institutional context, which I don't know if I did. I mean, it was personally useful for me in terms of laying hands on some stuff, but my understanding of this, thing is that it's not like students are going in there and building these things. It's more like a submission point for student work, to manifest itself, which if it leads to certain levels of, digital literacy enhancement among the professorate, amongst the people who are using it, then that's cool. But I mean, again, just to sort of play squat's advocate a bit there,
Yeah, and I'm not interested in playing squat's advocate.
Okay, you were completely underwhelmed by the lack of intention and pedagogical purpose.
I was offended as an educator. Okay. I was offended at the lack of thought that has gone into this, and I don't think there's a pedagogical base to it.
Okay.
I don't think it's fair to students.
Okay, how so?
How would it be? What is the functionality? What is the actual point other than here's another way to do a Dropbox, right? We have Dropbox for LMSs.
I never thought of it in those terms. How is this different than a Dropbox?
What
Okay.
what is the actual functionality that helps a student learn, and why are the students spending a whole pile of time learning this thing that you haven't really thought about and you're proud of not having thought about? Literally, as soon as somebody repeatedly stated there was a lack of thought they put into this, and that was a trigger warning for me.
Well, fair enough. And I think the notion here is that, the person, like an education technologist is not going to be a person who is in a classroom or a virtual classroom with students interacting with it. What it is it's going to be an instructor of some variety who's probably keen to try out, some kind of ed tech, some kind of thing, and they are interacting with an educational technologist. And so this is something where the educational technologist, rather than saying, here's a Dropbox you can use, here's the thing, which would be a very simple, straightforward procedure, here's this edifice, right? So if we're talking about an edifice which sort of helps elevate the position of an educational technologist within an administrivia kind of setting, right? Like sort of helping to justify a certain class of educational support and educational administration, right? I mean, that's kind of, if you're looking for, that's kind of, I mean, that's like, that's not me being harsh. That's just kind of like, I look for power relationships, and due to Paulo Freire, increasingly I see that in terms of who benefits from this in terms of power, politics, and finance. So if sort of this edifice is being sort of given over to the professorate, or the instructors, rather than sort of a more simple, kind of solution, then I mean, it helps to build, more robust platforms upon which, these sort of secondary level of support or educators can kind of justify their positions.
Okay, the justifying the positions. This looks like a job security thing for somebody. This looks like I'll develop this and then I'll have a job for life because they'll need me to provide support for it. Here's another one.
Okay.
Let's not do Google searches anymore. Let's go back to the yellow pages. Right? Why are we going backwards? It doesn't make sense.
I kind of have some nostalgia for the yellow pages. Is that this year's edition? Do they still deliver those to your door?
This showed up last week, and I thought the serendipity of that was quite nice. That's why I have the yellow pages here.
I like your unmetaphor there, dude. I like it. Like, it's a bad example. It's still an example. I'm no longer a homeowner. I'm a home renter. So I don't get that anymore. My kid's mom probably still, she probably got her latest edition of that. I just think, man, like a lot of trees being murdered for that. A lot of like chemicals going into dyes and inks, unnecessarily for that. I know that online teaching and learning stuff is not environmentally neutral because of server farms producing requiring electricity and hydro and whatnot. But I just the redundancy of something is actually more harmful than not being useful. It's in the resources that go into it that could have been used somewhere else. So I take it then from your elegant metaphor, dude, that that's part of your concern with the SPLOT format, in as much as it looks like a whole lot of work that isn't just for something that's educationally either shaky or just not viable at all, but it's something where those resources could have gone into something more helpful with perhaps an expressed educational purpose behind it, rather than an expressed non-educational playful purpose, right?
I look at U Canterbury, who did some stuff on this like a decade ago, like 2014 or something.
Okay.
And then there's been nothing since. that I could find, and I spent time looking. So if it's there, like I'm normally pretty good at finding stuff, but part of the problem is this name that is so utterly useless. And one of my trigger warnings was, "Oh, we're proud of how undefined all this is." It's like, well, are you kidding me?
I'll tell you what then. I mean, because I think that there may be some potential blowback on this, or not. I think maybe the people who, put this together, even though, we're kind of nominally associated through social media, they're either going to, have a little hissy fit about it and, comment, which I really hope they do, for some engagement purposes, or they're just going to not see it and it's not going to register. Either way. You know where we live. Come find us. Please.
Yeah.
But I guess, so can you just kind of take me through beyond the conceptual and marketing issue and the fact that, that it is more or less just a Dropbox of sorts? Was there anything?
I'm really not, like, in every other episode we've done.
Yep.
I think I've been pretty happy and pretty positive and see the bonuses of this.
Yeah.
And behind this, it looks like an ego. It looks like somebody's very proud of how clever they are.
Okay.
And let's do this. I don't know who's behind this. None of my business. I couldn't even find it when I went looking. So it's like, why would something like this exist just to distract people from stuff that could be useful?
So right? I guess. So then if we sort of look at the layer of disseminating and sharing knowledge of something, okay, so it's not, just sort of us, kind of kicking at a puppy here. It's like, it's something where, if there's an innovation of sorts, which is capable of, existing online and thereby touching, everybody with an internet connection on planet Earth, where, as you say, okay, so where are the scholarly or professional accounts of practice or testing or, trying it out, or even just kind of white papers, right? Like, here's a thing and, here's its general uses, like even without that much, scholarship, but just, professional level stuff.
Academic researchers are always looking for things to research.
That's true.
This hasn't been.
Well,
if it's been published, I don't know where. They're hiding it good, and the name is horrible, so you can't find it. So
to the extent, then, I think that this is something that has made its way to conferences, but not necessarily beyond those conferences, or it's something that's kind of kept kind of, well, along with like information communication technology, like, local level practice, ICTs, local ICTs, either at institutional or perhaps regional levels. But I guess that may speak to sort of an issue with the ed tech sector as a whole, wherein, I mean, I'm not disparaging the educational technologists as a class, but I mean, amongst those who I worked with and encountered, very few of them had degrees in education, right? It was people with, so it's like, it's not only that the educational consistency or, rigor within the field of educational studies simply may not be there, it's more even like that, the people who have those kind of credentials or kind of things are outsiders within the field, at pretty much every level, at the front end level, at the, certainly at the administrative level. So that, it's sort of like the things that those folks see are going to be different than if they had people who had backgrounds in how people learn, right? And it's not just something where you can take it for granted and go like, I studied English, I studied, whatever. So, I taught it. So therefore I know about teaching and learning. It's like, no, if you actually want to have, let's like respectfully, you don't. It's just respectfully, you don't. You have your own notions. You kind of have some stuff you can improvise and kind of, make up. But you don't have like a body of practice within the educational area, right? So
and you're so kind. You are so kind, because I wouldn't have included respectfully, because I taught a class. That doesn't mean I know how to teach.
This book has been doing me wonders. I'm kind of
what's that called? Can you tell me?
This is the Pocket Thich Nhat Hanh, who's this right Zen master guy from Vietnam, and my reading list lately has been kind of broadening out. So this is all about mindfulness, okay? Which, like focus on the in-breath, focus on the out-breath, and you can, that in itself can kind of lead you to the kingdom of God, or, your preferred place, at any given time. So this has been helpful for me lately. I've gotten another book into my Stoicism reading, which I'm kind of into now. How to Think Like a Roman Emperor, kind of a cheeky title, but it's sort of a narrative kind of account of Marcus Aurelius and his thinking and evolution there. I got a pile of books at this point. Women Who Don't, this is to the women who don't give a fuck. This is a book of poetry. I've given this to a mentor of mine, Dr. Shelley Johnson, what must say it, at Thompson Rivers, who expressed appreciation for it. Gave this to an ex-girlfriend who I don't know if she appreciated it or not, because I enclosed it in a book with some T-shirts of hers, or a box with some T-shirts of hers. And to celebrate the Victoria Day weekend, I'm reading about Victorian England, a giant graphic novel about Jack the Ripper.
Very cool.
So my point of all this, and of course, the free air, and then also, Cormac McCarthy. He's about 90 years old. He's going to die soon, and he's got some books that are out just now, new books that he was working on for more than a decade, that are dealing with life and death. So all of this is to say that the quality of, or even just the character of something that you put out, reflects what goes into it. So that wasn't it wasn't just like a digression and me kind of bragging about my reading in progress. It wasn't a little bit, but it was sort of like, if you're not reading, scholarly or professional or academic work on teaching and learning, then why would you think that what you are contributing to teaching and learning should be regarded by people who have that background as being, worthwhile, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're reading like, comic books and tech manuals and whatever else, and you're not even curious enough to go beyond that, then like, I don't know, what would you necessarily expect? And really, I guess, it's just kind of, head on out to the gravy train, and kind of take it as far as it can go with a minimum investment of intellectual effort. There. Now we're being critical.
Yeah, that's nice, because I realize I'm being a bit of a gatekeeper, because education matters to me and helping the students learn matters to me. And there did seem to be, did you ever see the television show Firefly? It lasted for part of a season like 20 years ago.
I am aware that people feel passionately about it. I saw some episodes. I thought, that's some quality sci-fi, but do tell. I'm interested where this is going.
I was one of the founders of the Alberta Browncoats, a not-for-profit fundraising organization in Alberta. It's been running for like 12, 13, 14 years now.
Is that a reference to that TV show?
Yeah, and then the lead actor, the star, is actually from Edmonton, and who moved down to the States and did that. Nathan Fillion. And one of his lines was, "I'm guessing you weren't burdened with an overabundance of schooling." And he uses that line in there to describe somebody, and it's like, that just triggered me for, yeah, like this isn't about education. This isn't about helping students. This is something else. And the fact that the literature really isn't there, that the whole academic group as a whole kind of walked away from this a decade ago, it just reminded me of a Microsoft Zune. Right? Zunes came out, they were going to be the iPod killer, and
I thought you said Zoom. Zune.
N. Isn't it Zune with an N?
What's a Zune? What is a Zune?
That's, oh my goodness.
Sorry, man.
You're the music guy. You were the music guy.
I am.
Apple came out with an iPod.
Yeah.
And a couple of years later, Microsoft came out with their Zune.
Their Zune. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So they came out and it was like, oh, look at this. And everybody's like, no, thank you. Why do I want less functionality and less usefulness and less pretty and less everything else? I'll stick with what the other stuff that's working.
Well, okay. So that said, I suppose, just in terms of the balance of challenges versus opportunities, it could be that there has simply been an significantly unrealized opportunity for proponents of this, or for those who exist with this and have lots of good things to say, to actually write some accounts of practice, put some stuff out there in the peer-reviewed journals,
give it a name that people can find.
So there's a branding issue, and actually maybe dispense with some of the whimsical, the thing about, sort of a whimsical, patina on something is that sometimes that can be sort of a mask for a negative intention towards something. It's like, I'm calling it as sort of a joke because, I have an entrenched lack of commitment to this and don't suggest that I'm not entitled to, so sort of the passive part manifests in passive aggression, with the aggression kind of filling in like an iceberg ready to smack the Titanic that goes up against it, right?
Yep.
Not to say that individual actors or groups of actors are necessarily that way, but I was having coffee with somebody, not that long ago, and she's just like, the problem is, with the sort of, bumbling kind of, male, academic or whatever kind of person, is that sort of, kind of bumbling or whimsical or, I'm kind of against the flow, but I'm still part of the institution kind of deal, is that actually often masks people who are pretty wound up and pretty negatively set against something, and who, at the very minimum, may that may not even manifest as like negative energy towards something. It may simply be just like an entrenched lack of intellectual curiosity, an entrenched lack of willingness to be intellectually curious, which I think might be even worse. It's like, I got my three things and I'm sticking to that. That's it, right? I got three things.
You're so kind.
I think I'm being a rampant asshole here, dude. So I appreciate you calling me kind. That's
You're kinder than me because I'm more blunt to the point. As soon as somebody doesn't take education seriously and doesn't take the student and the educator's time seriously, and this whimsical garbage is just that, right? That triggers my gatekeeper, my inner gatekeeper. It's like, no, this matters. You don't get to screw with it just because you're a bumbling whoever. If I don't know, whoever that is.
Whoever. I'm using a generic case, So
because I tried to look into some of the details, right? Now, other than being a fancy Dropbox, which is fine because I love WordPress and I want to do one of these on WordPress, and I'll have nothing but glowing things to say about that when we do the WordPress episode.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of a month's stereo pack? It's a music thing.
I don't know what that is, dude.
What about an endless loop tape cartridge?
You're talking about things that got tried but didn't take. Is that more the case here, bud?
And then 4 tracks, and then 8 tracks.
Oh, dang. Okay. You're just using differing non-standard nomenclature for things that we are pretty basic in their functionality, or we may have moved past. Is that kind of it there, bud?
We've moved, yes. And 8-track is the one that people of our vintage would probably know. But I bet your sons would be too young to probably know what an 8-track was.
My sons just get the digital mainlined. It's like their kids are going to be the ones with Musk's AI port.
True enough. But so we've got all of these things that we've moved past.
Yeah.
So if I came to you and said, "Hey, let's do the audio recording on 8-track," you might say, "Hey, that may not be a direction that the podcast needs to go in."
I would say for a one-off, I'd be like, hell yes, because I actually take great. We talk about misnomers, pseudonyms, red herrings, things that malapropisms. I mean, I take great pleasure in looking at those as impromptu opportunities, as well as just because what even is this now in this context, and deconstructing it from like a cultural standpoint and from a technological standpoint, because you can find some very interesting things through that critical discernment and critical deconstruction, I guess, which sort of maybe shows my hand as kind of a having postmodern kind of tendencies, which as an educator is kind of my prerogative, given the fact that I'm still less than 50 years old and whatever, right? Foucault is from the 70s, so I feel like so. But again, I'm just thinking, it's like you start talking about this stuff. I can talk about it with you, and even if you don't necessarily relate to some of it, you can be like, I get what you're saying there. It's like, but I mean, it's like I'm in a room, and I don't mean to cast disparaging things at past places I've worked, but I mean, it's like I'm in a room, and this is the stuff that's going through my head, and when I just try to express some of this, it's like, man, you're not drinking the same Kool-Aid as the rest of us. And it's not only that, it's like we are hostile towards it, right? Yep. And that was kind of my situation for some years. And, so even though I'm kind of going through this stress now about like, what was me, I'm in need of dollars in my bank account, like in every other aspect. My thinking about education has clarified largely through this endeavor, and also because the fact that now the Punk podcast and this literary website that I'm kind of coming up with, and some other stuff that I'm involved in, all of that stuff is kind of the same cloth now. So I just need to find a way to monetize it a little bit more. That's all.
That is always the challenge.
That's one of the challenges. Yeah, man.
Yeah, I used to work in a school district many years ago.
Can't be that
and
many,
I met somebody at a teachers conference.
Yep.
And they said, "Oh, you work there? How big is that?" And I said, "Oh, there's 60 teachers there." And they're like, 60 teachers? But they have so many job ads every year. We thought that was as big as Edmonton.
Yeah.
Because so many people were coming and going. They'd come get a job and then get out as soon as they could. Right? It's just the number of job ads kind of told me about how healthy a place was. So when I finally left, it was like, it bit to leave for that financial stuff, but I was so happy at the other end.
Well, I mean, I had, an interview with a larger, first tier university, actually last week for an educational technologist role. And it was one of those things where like they asked me in the process of the interview, well, like how many, professors worked at your last place? And it's like I didn't have that information at hand, and nor did I see necessarily the relevance to it. And that was one of those interviews where about halfway through it, I just sort of began to think, man, it'd probably be okay if I don't get this, like, I would say yes out of necessity, but if that's kind of their line of questioning, it's like, I don't know, man, for what you're being asked to do, it shouldn't matter if you're dealing with dozens or hundreds, in terms of your workflow. I mean, maybe a bit just in terms of like what your, volumes consist of incoming queries and things like that. But if you're really looking at it again from an educational standpoint, which I realize not a lot of people do, not everybody do, is just like, it's just the same care and the same preparation and the same engagement should go into it. So, when you and I have kind of remarked like, well, it's okay if only 5 or 6 people even hear this, it's like, exactly. Yeah. And if, the signal can get amplified, if there's a wider audience for it, I mean, what we do is going to, hopefully be the same because we're thinking about it and preparing for it with the same level of care,
Yeah, absolutely. I know that's my bias because normally with our topics, I can be positive and see the good in it. This is a great example of, wow, I would avoid it like the plague. And I'm not even trying to be negative. It's
no.
If I can do any of this stuff with an LMS that already exists at the institution, or I can download Moodle for free.
Yep.
Why would I have to then go get WordPress and then get the plugin and then do this thing and then do that thing when there's other ways that are more thought out? And it's better for the students.
And again, from the strictly technologist standpoint, I'm glad that we are going to be, able to have the happy version of this because I mean, I actually it wasn't just sort of post unemployment irony that drove me towards getting this WordPress tattoo. It actually was like, man, I actually, find stuff within this platform that when I sort of apply my thinking as an educator or as a, writer or whatever towards it, that can scale out, and that again, somebody from somewhere else at the other end of the planet or the other end of the country could potentially engage with, and then that sort of sparks something in their thinking. The potential unintended benefits there are significant. So in defense of the SWOT, your graphic here at the very beginning, which you've used before, is you are not useless because you can still be a bad example. It's like, fine, here's sort of something that is expressly without an educational concept, like expressly without an educational concept. Now we're talking about it. Now I've sort of tried some, WordPressy kind of stuff that mimics some of that functionality and kind of, changes the context around for it and does some other stuff. It's like, these are positives responding against something, absent. It presents a gap. It presents a gap that can be filled. And if, as well as like a functional and pedagogical gap, which exists with this thing, there is, as we've described, as you've described quite well, a literature and documentation and peer review gap. So that's an invitation to step up. That's an invitation to, fill that up, by the people who are the proponents of it or who have just sort of been ambivalent about it but live with it anyway, to bring those accounts into the wider domain. And if there is something that we missed, if like there's this whole, like there's 15 academic articles or peer-reviewed articles or whatever, or that it's made like a high-profile conference like EDUCAUSE or something like that. If this stuff is out there and we missed it, please, we welcome that you draw our attention to it. and we'll have a follow-up episode about how, look, guys, we missed it, but it's no skin off us because, you know, we were expressing our situation and our standpoint with it, and we stand to be corrected in all circumstances. And we're not going to take it personally. Sure. We're not going to take it personally because we're sensible people most of the time. We're serious people, and we care as much about this education enterprise that we, in fact, will invite, you know, balanced, thought out things that are contrary to our current thinking, because it will help advance our current thinking, right? So anybody who takes any of this, anybody who's watching this and is like, you know, I doubt you're still watching it if you're getting bugged by it, you know, really. But if you are and you're getting bugged by it, just think like, nah, man, these guys are actually doing us solid by inviting us to, you know, either create something or to show that something has been created to support, you know, this thing, right? So that's the happy kind of ending we can sort of cycle down towards here, bud.
It reminds me, I don't know if I told you this story.
Okay,
when I was doing my PhD in Australia, there was a couple of us in the faculty doing PhDs, and this one lady was very keen and, you know, like super eager and all the rest. And she had an hour-long conversation with me, and I got trapped in a doorway, so I couldn't get out. And she's talking to me, and she's saying, APA 6 is wrong. I needed to change it because. And so she spent an extra 6 months working on her thesis, trying to convince her committee that it was okay that her reference list and citation list at the back of the thesis was different than APA. And I was like, why bother? There are APA.
Why die on that hill? Yeah.
Why die on that hill? And this felt kind of like a hill to die on, right? It's like there's other tools that do it that are thought out.
So from an from an educator standpoint, from an end user standpoint, because I can see it as being a hill to die on if you're getting, you know, upper 5, lower to mid 6 figures, you know, to promulgate, you know, this kind of thing with in-house conferences and local things like that, you know. But, you know, sharing and disseminating knowledge usually involves, if not a publication, at least, you know, something tangible in the public realm that a Google search or Google Scholar search should, you know, be able to lead to without too much, you know, difficulty.
If people are going to do that, to mess around with things that are technology kind of and not really education, let's get rid of QWERTY keyboards. Let's change the position of all the keys, right? They've done that before too.
Right, right. So why reinvent the Dropbox with this sort of, you know, edifice, which is being marketed by the people who, you know, came up with it as whimsical, you know, whatever, right? Like, it's like, oh, okay, you're not taking this seriously. So unless I'm not taking my thing seriously, then why would I bother, right? But, you know, no, man, I get it. I like to think that this dude would get it too. Marcus A. I just, in my, you know, notebooks, my journals, whatever, I just like, you know, as for Marcus A, you know, it's like, it's, you know, he was ahead of his time, and he actually was ahead, you know, because right, ahead. He was ahead of his time and ahead of his time. He was like, you know, go ahead, man.
Oh, that hurt me a little.
Well, it's all part of your growth, son. It's all part of your necessary experience, not to be feared. Little discomfort. The obstacle is the way, right? That's one way.
True enough.
Yeah. Okay, man.
Okay, so I have three little things. The word of the podcast is why. Just why.
That's good. That's good.
The phrase of the podcast is lack of depth of thought.
Okay.
And the question of the podcast is what makes a tool or technique worth using with students? And that one's not a joke. That's what makes something worthy of a student's time. because students' time is valuable and precious. What makes a tool worthy or a technique worthy?
Wow,
Please let us know.
That actually may be, one of the better questions of the podcast. I mean, they're all good, but I mean, that one kind of jumps out. I'd say that why is actually, short of it being something that humans have sort of been asking since we developed the, capability of rational thinking, rational thought. That's, nothing less profound than why. That's a good one. And lack of depth of thought. I mean, again, opportunities and challenges. It's an opportunity to remedy something of that, right? So that's what any education thing is. It's like, here's a chance to kind of step forward into the deeper waters, as it were, right? So,
right on.
Okay, man. Well, I'm feeling pretty good about this. I got my coffee out of my blessed coffee mug. It's not just.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's not.
Very
it's
nice.
not. It's not just a. It's not just a hashtag on my social media posts about records. It's actually, a container for a beverage. So happy Victoria Day if you celebrate. I'm actually recording the punk podcast tomorrow because we were supposed to do it yesterday, but we're doing it tomorrow, in part because we're doing it about Quebecois rock and roll music. And in Quebec, tomorrow's not Victoria Day; it's Patriots Day. They named it after the people who were against the crown in those respects. So we just thought it'd be appropriate. So happy Victoria Day if you partake. Happy Patriots Day if you partake. And if tomorrow is simply Monday where you are, then have a great Monday as well. Is there anything else we want to throw in here, Doug, on the way out, or no, we're good? Okay.
No, just have a good one. I'm looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, absolutely. Likewise. Take care, everybody. Thanks a lot for listening.